I'll talk about working with nodes in general and show two specific node types, say nodes and yes/no question nodes. We author flows in the flow editor. Changes made in the flow editor are immediately saved in a draft state. A new version is created every time you click the Save button. The flow editor supports basic keyboard commands such as Ctrl+C for copy, Ctrl+V for paste, and others you see here. I'll now review basic node creation, editing, sorting, and versioning. To create a node, go to the project dashboard, click on the plus sign, and select the top icon. Name the flow. Select your flow language and click Create. Now I see an empty flow with just a start node. You create new nodes by clicking the vertical ellipsis on the right side of the node. I'll create a say node. You can edit the node by clicking the vertical ellipsis and selecting Edit. You can also click on the node and press the E key on your keyboard. Alternatively, you can double-click on the node. The simplest use of the say node is to send a basic text output to the user. I'll say alpha. Now I'll open the interaction panel and say hello. The flow sends alpha back to the client. I'll create another say node and enter Bravo in the say field. When I enter hello in the interaction panel now, Cognigy sends both alpha and Bravo back to the user. Cognigy executes nodes from left to right and top to bottom. If I sort the Bravo node to the top, the order of the responses sent back to the browser changes. I like the state of this flow, so I'll save the flow by clicking the Save Flow button in the top right corner of the flow editor. When I do this, note that a new version is created. I can optionally enter a comment describing the change and click Save. A new version has been created. I can now create a new say node and enter Charlie in the say field. This puts the flow now into draft mode. I can switch the flow editor to a previous version by using the drop-down menu at the top. When I switch back to the prior version, the Charlie node is no longer present. When I switch to the latest version, Charlie appears again. In the interaction panel, I can choose which version to interact with. In the latest version, I get 3 responses: Bravo, Alpha, and Charlie. In the previous version, I get 2 responses: Bravo and Alpha. Say nodes can do more than just output basic text to a user. I'll show two features of Say nodes: text variations and channel-specific outputs. To start, I'll edit the Bravo node. Text variations can be used to provide a more natural experience for your users. When you enter multiple values into the Say field, Cognigy will cycle through them randomly. Selecting the linear toggle will loop through them linearly. Selecting the loop toggle and the linear toggle will loop through the Say nodes repeatedly. I'll add some additional entries in the Bravo node. And I'll test this a few times in the interaction panel. We can provide different outputs for different channels. Channels are named for the experience in which the interaction is initiated. For example, the Facebook Messenger channel is used for requests originating in Facebook Messenger. Each channel has a different format based on the capabilities of the channel. The Alexa channel can be used to output text to an Amazon Echo, cards for the Amazon Alexa app, and display templates for the Echo Show. You can find more information on creating Alexa skills in the Cognigy documentation. The Facebook Messenger channel allows you to create user interface elements that are richer than simple text. These also appear in the default Cognigy web client. You can experiment with these to test out different user interface options. You can find visual examples by searching for Facebook Messenger templates online, as you see here. Now I'll show you two samples. First, I'll show text and quick replies. This option provides buttons for a user to click that send a message back to Cognigy. And you'll note I see a preview in the right-hand pane as I populate the template. I'll start by adding text. And then some quick replies. And you'll see a preview of that here in the right-hand panel. Now I'll show buttons. I'll start off again with some text. And now I'll add some buttons. Note that I have the option to provide a URL or a postback. A URL will link to a website. A postback will send an input back to Cognigy. I'll save and we can preview in the interaction panel. And you'll see I have Alpha and Bravo here. I'll click on Bravo and that's sent back to Cognigy. I'll now talk about yes-no question nodes. Use a yes-no question node when you're looking for an answer to a basic question that only requires a yes or no as a response. After a yes-no question is asked, Cognigy will listen to the next 3 messages to see if a positive or negative answer is sent. If so, it will execute either the onYes branch or the onNo branch. Note that a yes-no question node does not prevent the rest of the flow from being executed. However, you can stop the flow execution after a yes or no is received. To illustrate this, I'll delete the other nodes, then create a yes-no question node. And I'll ask the question. I'll also stop the flow execution if the user says yes or no. You'll see the effect of this when I demonstrate the flow. Now I'll create say nodes for both the yes and no cases. Now I'll start interacting with the flow. The flow asks, is it alpha? But I need to think before I give a response. The flow executes completely and asks me the question again, but I still need to think. The flow executes again. I've decided now that the answer is no. And now Cognigy outputs it is no, based on what I configured in the onNo node. This example demonstrates a few points. First, you can ask a yes-no question. Cognigy will re-execute the flow until it receives a positive or negative response. When an expected response is received, a subflow is executed depending on whether the user responded affirmatively or negatively. You can optionally tell Cognigy to stop execution of the flow when it receives an affirmative or negative response.